Let's bring you part two of that interview with SIU head and advocate Andy Mothibi, and of course looking at some of the issues around prosecutions as well as what is happening at Fort Hare University, what's coming out of the National Lotteries Commission, as well as an update on the Digital Vibes investigation. Let's talk about another story that is once again back in the spotlight. And I remember the SIU talking about getting involved here, the issues at Fort Hare University. There's, of course, issues around the tenders, a cleaning tender there and all of that, but there's also issues around some of the qualifications, the academic qualifications, that is, and how they're being attained. How far are you with that particular investigation, given what we've seen, I mean, around the Eastern Cape Premier, for example, and he's denying this, and he's now challenging the matter that he may have participated in academic fraud. There's also the Public Service and Administration Minister, who also, of course, has denied this. So let's talk about that. Where is that investigation into that university?
Right. Again, just to say, this investigation is really happening within the framework of us having adopted the strategy to turn around our investigations as quickly as is possible. So the team is already at work since the proclamation. There's various aspects to cover, as you correctly indicated: procurement and the awarding of degrees and so on. So as you may know, that to comment on an ongoing investigation can be a bit difficult, because the team has not really concluded that part. But I can assure you and the public that we are moving as speedily as possible. We have seen public comments and public reports, and we really don't want to be diverted by those. The team is at work in ensuring that those that evidence points to are approached and given a legal process of the right to be heard, so that when we make findings, we are able to say we've followed due process. So yes, I hear you. I hope you would bear with me in terms of not going into detail. We are envisaging that the first installment of findings should probably be released by end of June, I would say, on various of the aspects that we are looking at. And at that time, when we reach the findings, of course, the report will be presented to the president, but we would be able, one way or another, be able to inform you and the public on the findings that we have reached. It
must concern you, though, that while this investigation unfolds, we've now seen what has been happening around the Vice Chancellor. We've also seen, another official at the institution being killed as well. And we saw that bodyguard to the Vice Chancellor now, forcing the Vice Chancellor to even go into hiding. So certainly, I think that while you're doing this particular investigation, that aspect of developments there should be of grave concern for you.
No, it is. Definitely is. And we are in contact with the management of Fort Hare University, particularly their security department, in terms of measures to put in place. That doesn't only concern us in terms of the Eskom Fort Hare employees, it also concerns us from our investigators' perspective. We have to make sure that our investigators also are appropriately protected, because we've had instances where they have indicated, given some of those instances that are happening around the Vice Chancellor and just generally, they've said to us that we need to review their protection measures. We got the crime intelligence involved to do a security threat analysis, because we were required to do that, and we've got the report. We are taking measures to ensure that they are protected.
There's another issue. A lot of South Africans, I'm sure you saw how this issue became quite a huge one, the National Lotteries Commission. And we saw the moving and the freezing of assets in that regard. Others came out to deny any involvement here, but then we saw some of their assets then being frozen. Can we expect to see more arrests in that regard, or would you say that your work there potentially is done?
No, the investigation is ongoing. And as we have seen, just like in many other investigations, once the proclamation is issued and the public know that we are investigating in a particular environment, we keep on getting the allegations, So in this area of the National Lotteries Commission, there's a whole number of non-profit organizations that are involved, and non-profit companies, NPOs and NPCs. So the number is quite high because we have now faced the investigation, phase 1, 2, phase 1. Phase 1 is nearing completion, and that's where we'll probably release an interim report which says this is how we have dealt with phase 1, this is how many NPOs were involved, this is how many assets were freezed, this is how many assets, how much of assets was forfeited to the state, and this is how many of the matters referred to NPA, and this is how many of officials that were dealt with. Right?
It sounds like there's layers that are still coming, and we are likely to see more people's assets being frozen?
There is a possibility, yes, indeed. From the evidence that the team have shown me, there's a number of assets that we are looking at based on the evidence that we've adduced and pointing to certain individuals. And by the way, for you and the public, and probably you know this, why is it that we are quick to move and freeze assets? It's because once we have evidence pointing to a certain individual and the individual is aware that we have pointed to them and implicated them, we don't want the individuals to what the other people would call decimate or dissipate the assets, so that when ultimately we go to court and want to recover, we come back with what's called a hollow judgment and we can't recover anything. So that's why we are acting quickly to freeze those assets, so that we are able to return what's due back to the National Lotteries Commission.
I'm going to ask you something that I know you're going to laugh when I ask you, but I'm going to ask it nonetheless because it's an ongoing investigation. Are these prominent individuals?
Well, the prominence of these individuals, really, I think it depends on which side of the fence you sit.
I'm talking about you've seen some of the caliber of people involved in these investigations. So, are these prominent individuals?
Look, as I say, we want to believe that we deal with each and every one the same way. If evidence points to you, it doesn't matter at what level you are. We pronounce and we act, right? So the extent to which there are senior people that used to work at NLC, for example, will pronounce that. The extent that there were board members will pronounce around that. And the extent that there are individuals in the communities, in the societies that were involved, we will point that out. So you'll find a variety of individuals that we deal with. Those that have used this lottery processes to submit applications and get the lottery money with the pretext that it's going to benefit the public, but our investigation points out that that money never benefited the public. That is really such a sore point that we're having to deal with here, and we have seen in various instances, and we have not been shy to pronounce that certain individual received this benefit. It was meant for the public, and will continue to do so.
Yeah, and really, there, I'm sure you've seen a number of people talking about arrests once again, to say that you may have frozen these particular assets, but there needs to be people that are getting arrested. There needs to be people that are not only going to have their assets frozen, but still continue with their lives. And years later, we are back at square one. So, are you hoping that with some of the changes that have been made to the board at the NLC, that we could be seeing a different picture here, and we could be seeing more cases being pursued in this regard?
I am confident with that, Bongi. I can say we've engaged with the current board, we've engaged with the commissioner that has recently been appointed. in fact, there's also indications that in other business areas, not necessarily in the grant space, but in the procurement space and so on, that there might be allegations that we have to pursue and look at and expand the proclamation to include that. So we have seen a determination from the minister, from the board, from the current executive to ensure that they clean up that environment. So we have seen that there will be a push for consequence management that we always call for, whether it's disciplinary process, prosecution, and I know that one of the board members actually, have initiated a process to reach out to NPA as a board. So we are appreciative of that, so that we can continue to see those actions.
Give us an update of where we are with the digital vibes matter, because we saw it come up last year and there was talk of people being cleared. The SIU moved in quickly to say no one has been cleared. The matter is still before the High Court, and there appears to have been silence now. Where are we with that matter? Right.
Bongi, as you know, that was part of the huge investigation that we did in investigating corruption, maladministration and malpractice during the COVID-19 time with regard to the procurement of protective personal equipments, PPE as they call them. So we have made several findings in that investigation. I mean, it was around 144 billion worth of values of contract that we were investigating, and more than 5,000 procurement processes that we were looking at across the country, amongst others being at the National Department of Health. That is where Digital Vibe was picked up. Now, like we did with the others, we investigated that contract and we found that it was awarded irregularly. There's some actions that have been taken, and we are pleased that disciplinary action was taken. Some of the consequence management was done there. There has been criminal referrals again in this Digital Vibes, and at last check we know that the Hawks was investigating that part. We also had the civil process now, which we ran with in terms of recoveries. Now the part that we are also in court with is the part that the former minister did not agree with the outcome of our report. Like any other South African citizen, he's got the latitude and the right to approach the courts. He approached the High Court and took us there and cited us as a respondent and cited the president and so on. So that part is still at court. There's been various changes of documents, exchanges. Some of the, what they call, preliminary issues being raised. A legal process can really protract. Yeah. But we are glad that the judges these days do what they call case management to avoid unnecessary delays from either party, right? So we are at the stage now. The legal team has briefed me where we are certainly waiting for a court date if there are no other issues that are being raised. So we could see a court date. We could see a court date allocated.
Are your recommendations being respected?
In terms of the recommendations to other departments, whether to improve the system, the administration, to take disciplinary action and so on, we are on record as saying, although there are others who are really implementing, and we are delightful about that, but there's a good percentage that's not implementing sorry, our recommendations. And we are pleased in this regard. And perhaps at the next occasion, we can depict for you the project that the President's office is busy with. Yeah. After SCOPA, we have raised issues around non-implementation of the SIU recommendations. There is a focused, structured project at Presidency that includes us to monitor the recommendations.
Okay, you owe me part 2, and I hope that with part 2 we can talk about some of the other issues that I'm very, very interested in, and hopefully we speak again when you have released some of the important reports. But with the health sector alone, I think you and I need the whole day to talk about what is going on there. But let me thank you for your time, and thank you for stopping by. Do appreciate it. That was Advocate Andy Mothibi. He's the head of the SIU.